Okay, Claudia, handing the hosting rights back over to you, and you're live.
Thank you.
Okay, good evening. Can everyone hear me? We're going to start off with welcoming everybody to our third virtual meeting of the...
Back over to you, and you're live.
Thank you.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we're good.
Okay, very good. All right, good evening and welcome to our third virtual meeting of the City of Dublin Board of Zoning Appeals. We continue to live in extraordinary times, and both the state of Ohio and the City of Dublin have declared states of emergency over the past few months to help address the circumstances of the COVID-19 pandemic. The Ohio legislature also passed several emergency laws to address the pandemic, including the ability for public entities to have virtual meetings. We appreciate this ability to maintain our continuity of government. For now, we will continue to hold our meetings online and live stream those meetings on YouTube. You can access the live stream on the city's website. In order to submit any questions or comments during the meeting, please use the form under the streaming video on the city's website. These questions and comments will be relayed to the board by the meeting moderator. We want to accommodate public participation and comment to the greatest extent possible. We welcome your comments on cases, but please refrain from making inappropriate comments. This is not a perfect system, but we will do our best in these challenging times, and we appreciate your patience. Can we have a roll call, please?
Ms. Herbert,
Here.
Ms. Cooper,
Here.
Mr. Dashler,
Here.
Mr. Nye.
Here.
Thank you. Next, we're going to have the acceptance of documents. I'll need a motion to accept the documents into the record.
I'll move.
I'll second.
Roll call,
Dashler.
please.
Mr. Dashler,
Yes.
Ms. Herbert,
Yes.
Ms. Cooper,
Yes,
Mr. Nye.
Yes.
thank you. And next, we need a motion for the approval of the meeting minutes from the June 27th, 2020 Board of Zoning Appeals hearing. Is there a motion?
I'll move.
Second.
Please
Ms.
call the
Cooper.
roll.
Ms. Cooper,
Approve, yes.
Mr. Dashler,
Yes.
Mr. Nye,
Yes.
Ms. Herbert.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Tonight we have one case. It is case number 20-120V. It is identified as the Whalen residence located at 5559 Old Fingla, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, Fingla Court. And our presenter tonight is Zach Hounshell, and I believe he'll be joining us. Zach, would you like to present your information and case for the board?
Absolutely. Good evening, board. Tonight, we have an application for review and approval of a
I'm sorry to interrupt. I have missed a critical thing, and that was the swearing in of the witnesses. So let's go backwards a little bit. Sorry about that. Anyone who is intending to give testimony before the board on this evening for this case, please raise your right hand and answer in the affirmative. Mr. Whalen, that's going to include you. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony to this board?
Yes,
All right, thank you. Sorry for the interruption, Zach.
not a problem. All right, can everybody view this?
Yes.
Excellent. Well, good evening. This is an application for review and approval of a non-use area variance. This site is located at 5559 Old Finglas Road or Court. This site is located within the Earlington Village neighborhood. The Earlington Village neighborhood is located within sub-area A2 of the Earlington-Brandon Plan Unit Development District. This site did remain vacant within the neighborhood up until 2019 when the applicant did develop a single-family home on this site. This application is to assist in obtaining permanent occupancy through the building department for this house. And shown on the screen are some existing conditions of the site with the newly constructed home. One point to note here with the site, shown in the left photo, which would be the east side of the house, there are existing power lines that run across a large portion of the site to the east, which you will see in illustration later in this presentation. The applicant is requesting a variance from zoning code section 153.133D2B, which would be the minimum amount of yard trees required for all street frontages. This requirement was adopted by the city into the zoning code in 2007, along with the residential appearance standards. Generally, what this meant was that based on the dimensions of newly constructed residential properties, the dimensions being the lot width and the front building setback, that would determine the amount of trees and tree sizes that would be required in the front yard of the residence. This ordinance was adopted, and the reasoning for this ordinance was to help beautify the neighborhoods and bring a better overall appearance to our neighborhoods throughout the city. For the dimensions of this site, the applicant is required to propose one large tree and one medium tree in the front yard of this site. Per zoning code definitions, a large tree is any tree at full grown height that would exceed 50 feet, and a medium would be any tree at full grown height that would be between 30 and 50 feet in height. The applicant has provided an applicant statement regarding the variance, which pointed towards practical difficulties with the site and the requirement of the large and medium tree. One of those would be the overhead electrical easement, or the overhead electrical power lines, which you saw in the previous photo. This electrical easement does take a large portion of the eastern half of the site, which would make it difficult to locate a large or medium tree there. The applicant has also stated that there are underground drain lines that are indicated by the red arrows on the site plan shown on the screen. The applicant has concerns that the planting of a medium or large tree surrounding these drainage lines would cause problems with drainage. And the applicant has also stated that because this requirement was adopted by the city in 2007, most of the houses within this neighborhood were not required to meet this requirement. And they would be the first in their neighborhood that would have to meet this requirement. Planning staff has reviewed this application to all applicable non-use variance criteria. And although the site has a large electrical easement on the eastern half of this site, and also considering the drainage on the northern portion of the site, staff has determined that there is room to locate the medium and large trees on this site, and are therefore recommending disapproval of this variance. If the board has any questions for staff, I am happy to answer them. If not, our applicant is also here to address his concerns with the requirement and his reasoning for the variance. Thank you.
Zach, can you go back to the next to last slide that shows kind of the electrical easement in red? And my question is, where exactly did the staff recommend that these, that one. Where did you recommend that the two trees get planted on this site plan?
So After discussions with our inspectors that typically do landscaping for residential properties, they had indicated that the locations, at least for the medium tree, could be located between the drain lines and the driveway, and the large tree could be located towards that northeast portion of the site. So that was what was indicated to planning staff where those could be.
So we're talking about a 30-foot and a 50-foot tree. What is the, and I assume you mean between the drain lines, meaning that the drain line that's west of the driveway, right? So in between that red drain line, not that one, the other one, that one in the driveway, is that what they're
Correct.
suggesting?
That
So
was my
what's
understanding, yes.
What's the distance between that and if you go farther west, the large tree, which I assume would have to be over there? What is the distance?
I am not sure of the specific distance for that off the top of my head.
What's the frontage on this property?
The frontage was, I believe it was 70 to 80 feet.
So this looks like maybe 1/3 we're talking about of the property. I don't know, half.
Correct.
20,
To me,
it looks like, go ahead.
I'm sorry, it doesn't look like it's 70 to 80. If you're doing the additions, it looks like your driveway is at 16 feet and the easement comes right up to that drain, which is 24 feet. So those two,
Together
16 and 24, are a little over 40 for the easement and the driveway. And then you go the other side, and the way I'm reading that is it's like 25 feet. So that would
That's what
only
I
be
was wondering, is that 20, is that
65 feet on the frontage at most, because it's kind of a pie-shaped property, and that 25 foot on I'm not sure which direction that is, but as I look at your picture, to this left of the drain line and the driveway, that doesn't count what the setbacks are along the side there.
yeah.
Yeah, Zach, are you saying you don't know that number from the I'm going to use just direction on this, the left red line to the, I guess I'd call it no build zone of the property line? I just want to make sure I heard Sarah's question right.
And you're saying the second red line
One,
point
the left red line, the left drain line.
from the
On
property
the
line?
west side.
Yeah, from the property line, from the west side. You're right, Sarah. Yes, from the west side. I was just wondering if it told you the width and the depth that it gives them there for that
Right.
one little plot.
And I don't have the specific numbers. These drain line locations were provided to me through a sketch by the applicant. So I don't have access to the specific location. These are, like I said, these are estimate locations.
Okay.
But just to clarify, if I can, if that's a water drain line that makes an elbow and then hooks to a straight line out, that area between that drain line, which is adjacent to the driveway, and the no build line on the property over to the, and I'm again pointing left, although I know you can't see, but that area is something of 20 feet tops, because
Is it 5 foot?
splash mark says 25, but that doesn't count. I think that 25 is to the driveway. So you're losing, to me, it looks like and also where it's placed, it looks like you could be losing up to 6 feet, maybe more, from the drain line and the no build zone, making that space very tight for
Can I clarify something real quick? So the entire frontage of the lot, which is the curved part, is about 80 feet, which is how they're kicked into that 60 to 90 foot tree requirement. The 25 building line is actually a measurement from the front of the lot, the
Back.
green curvy line, to that line, and that 25 goes from the east to the west. And that is where your house cannot be in front of that line. So it's not indicating from the east side of the driveway. Yes.
And then Zach, these water lines that are there, I assume that the homeowner installed them and they were not there existing when they built the house?
Correct.
Okay.
They are drainage lines from the house. The central, the one just left or just west of the driveway is their drainage line for the sump pump.
Okay. I don't have any other questions for right now.
Hey, Zach. On the overhead electrical easement piece, can there be any tree underneath it? Can it be a small tree? I mean, what does the easement specify specifically? That there can be nothing below it, or can a certain tree of a different height be there?
Generally, the recommendation of our zoning inspectors is, and this isn't just here, but generally across the area, is to not have those medium or large trees underneath, just because you get a little, I mean, planting any kind of tree underneath the electrical or power lines is usually recommended against. So the recommendations of our staff is planting these trees outside of the overhead easements. That's where the determination comes from our staff.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to go back to that figure still. Your definition here on the minimum, or the definition of the, under the code, is the large tree is greater than 50 feet at maturity, and a medium tree is 30 to 50 feet at maturity. That requires a fairly substantial root structure as well. Is an observation. So I would say that in the easement area overhead, not only would it be not advisable, but 30 feet to 50 feet, you'll be in the electrical lines. So I do believe that has eliminated that whole side.
Well, and I think let's just assume the easement owner is AEP or something. If you look at their easement document, I'm sure it talks about that type of thing around their easement, and probably, if it's like many that I've read, prohibits that type of vegetation in their easement area. So, I mean, you just should pretty much discount that whole overhead electrical easement area.
Yeah, exactly. I'm coming back. I actually have more questions now after I said I didn't, the old attorney thing, right? Zach, in prior situations like this, is a driveway installed by the homeowner ever subtracted from the calculation of lot width for tree planting?
No, the lot width is, in this case, is always taken just from the front width of the lot. It doesn't have any consideration on the driveway.
Okay, so if I wanted to come in and put a driveway in all the way across front of my property, the city's not going to say, "Oh, you get an exception for that." It's just what the available land is, right?
Correct. It's estimated on the land without any structure on it.
And that calculation that you and Claudia gave us, I just want to make sure I wrote this down in my note correctly. I know that it puts us in the 60 to 90 feet, but is that including the easement area as part of the frontage calculation of being, I think I wrote on 80 feet?
Correct.
And we do not have I asked you a different calculation earlier, and I'm sorry for all the math questions. We do not have what the frontage calculation would be subtracting the easement from the front. Is that accurate also?
That would be correct.
Okay, so there's a chance that if we were to take off that easement, they would drop into the up to 59.9 feet category and would be in a different size tree category, right?
It's hard to say based on the easement is 50 feet in width, although it's not 50 feet on this site. It does cut across to the neighboring site to the east.
Okay.
So I mean, it shows that there's approximately 24 feet. One of the measurements is 24. So you're probably looking at 20 feet at the front of the lot for that easement. So it
So
would
it's close
still,
to the 60 feet.
correct.
Okay, thanks.
So
Zach.
like I said, that measurement is taken without account of any easements or structures on the site.
Understand. Thank you.
You're welcome.
But if the property had an 80-foot wide frontage, less 25 feet of easement, which is a no tree planting easement. And I'm sorry, we don't have the language of the easement, but I think we can all assume it's not a good idea to plant large trees under it. That would still bring that frontage down to something under 60 feet. And you still have to allow for the appropriate size driveway.
Well, but my understanding, Marty, is that the lot width doesn't take into consideration the driveway, because this minimum yard tree requirement doesn't take that into consideration for any other property. So I don't think it would be fair for us to subtract the driveway off of just this one when they don't.
No, I
graduate.
agree. I agree that we are not subtracting out the driveway, but I'm saying even with the driveway, once you subtract the easement, you are under 60 feet of frontage.
And what I heard Zach say is they don't know that. He said it's around 20. So that's what I was asking. So it would put it close to 60. So I don't think we know the exact measurement. So if it's 80, we're either right at the 59.9 above or below it. But I mean, my guess would be just looking at the picture, and this is just an educated guess, it puts us below it.
Anybody else have any other questions at this time for Zach?
Not at this time.
No, thank you.
All right, Claudia, I would like you to read into the record before we take the testimony of Mr. Whalen. I'd like to have you read into the record the public comments we received on this case.
Certainly. We received an email from a Mr. Mike Berry of 5570 Old Finglass Court, and it says this email follows our phone conversation. He had previously spoken to Zach regarding the new house on our cul-de-sac. Mr. Whalen would like a variance on the requirement to plant 2 trees on his newly developed property. We are in favor of granting the variance. As the other homes on our street were built 20 years ago, the existing trees are approaching maturity. Allowing the variance will not affect the aesthetics of our street. And then the other one is from the Graham family at 5545 Old Finglass Court. And their comment is, we live next door to the Whalen residence. We, along with other neighbors, support the family's request for variance. The applicable code does not make sense in this situation and in fact will do more harm than good. The Whalen family has done a great job of making sure that new home blends in with the rest of the court. Enforcing the requirement that they plant these trees is misguided and harmful. The code section was undoubtedly adopted to ensure uniformity for the continuing expansion of new neighborhoods and community development. That is not the situation for the Whalen family, as this neighborhood has been around since the early 90s. Please make the correct decision and grant the Whalen family request for a variance.
Okay, thank you, Claudia. Anybody? We ready to proceed with Mr. Whalen's testimony? Mr. Whalen, you have the floor.
Thank you, everyone, and appreciate the opportunity for variance request and for everyone's time this evening. We love this neighborhood. We've been in the neighborhood for 6 years now. We lived right at the street on Wings Livery, and when we saw the opportunity to new house in this mature neighborhood, we jumped right all over the opportunity. We like all the all the trees and the mature of the neighborhood, and we understand the reason for the ordinance. For new developments where you want to establish, all the trees and the mature look over time. But as, the Grahams indicated in their statement, it seems like this ordinance is more of a requirement for, new developments, not a mature neighborhood like Earlington Village is. A couple of points that I wanted to add to, presentation. In the easement in the front of the house between the sidewalk and the street is a tree that's, I would say, at least of a medium height. That's, very mature. And so if we have to plant a medium and large tree, in the west side of the front yard, you got a lot of trees coming together. And with the underground drains, I'm really concerned about water issues with those. And in fact, I'm very sensitive to it because when we lived at Wings Livery, we had some root issues from some larger trees that pierced through the underground drains and caused some, water backup in our basement. So look, I know everyone, who has mature trees has to deal with that, but I'm just very sensitive to it. And so it's one of the key reasons why I'm asking, we're asking for this variance. The other thing I want to point out is I have talked to my landscaper. His name's Jared Buck at Buck and Sons. And, I informed him of the requirement in the ordinance. And he thought it also did not make sense considering the power line that we talked about and the mature tree that's already in the easement in front of the house. The other point I'll make too is in the Old English Court, the 4 houses that share the power line easement, none of those houses have more than 1 tree. 2 of the houses have 1 tree in the easement, and the other house only has no tree in the easement and just has a small tree in their front yard. So I think if I were forced to plant these 2, additional trees in the front yard, optically, I don't know if it would, aesthetically, I don't know if it would look good in the court. See if I have any other points to make here. Oh, yeah, one more point to make. Like I said before, love the trees in the neighborhood, like the like the look of trees and the the quantity of them. If the board is not willing to approve the request for no trees, would it consider maybe 2 small trees or 1 tree in the west side of the front yard? That way, we have space between the mature tree that's in the easement between the street and the sidewalk, and then also would avoid any potential issues with the underground drains. And that's one item that my landscaper mentioned is, medium and large tree requirement does not make sense for your lot, but a small tree or maybe 2 small trees would potentially work. So I'd ask the board to consider that if the answer is, well, we want some trees, can it be small trees versus a medium and large tree?
Thank you, Mr. Whalen. Does anybody from the board have questions for Mr. Whalen?
I do. Mr. Whalen, thank you. First of all, that was my question, was going to be, were you willing to plant smaller trees based on the lot size? So thanks for telling us that. One thing I want to comment on something that I have a question for you. I don't think that either from the community member statement or your statement that we can presume that city council didn't intend this for neighborhoods that were existing. I mean, clearly as attorneys, as members of the board are, we know that they were aware that there are existing communities at the time. That does not mean I disagree with you. I just don't think that that's the reason we rely upon. The question I have for you is based on the criteria we have to consider. So one is, was there anything from your action or inaction that created this situation? And so what I keep hearing you say is, one, there's an electrical easement, and the city has told us that was there when you purchased it. That's right. And the second is the drainage lines that you installed. So I guess I'm trying to get there because I don't disagree with you at all. I guess what I'm saying is, help me with the answer of how you didn't create this situation in some ways, because I think there's an answer there. I just help me figure it out.
Well, look, I relied, obviously on our builder and their engineering to come up with the appropriate drainage system for the house. I'll be honest with you, I didn't, point out the requirement of planting the trees, or didn't know about the requirement, frankly, to the builder him to consider. But again, we relied on their expertise on where to put the drains, and so certainly didn't want to suggest a different drainage structure that could cause some, issues down the road.
Okay. The other question I have, just while I'm asking you, is I heard you say, at least I wrote down that you said there are other individuals that share the easement with you that do have trees planted in the easement.
Yes, in their easement, by easement, it's between the sidewalk and the street.
And you said you have one there already, correct?
Yes, we have one there already. That's, I would say, mature, at least of the medium height. The house directly across from me has a very similar tree in that easement, with no other trees in their front yard. Two other houses to the east share the power line easement. One has a small tree in their easement between the sidewalk and the street, and the other house has no tree in the easement between the sidewalk and the street, and I would say a small tree in the front of the house.
You're not talking, oh, go ahead. I'm just clarifying. You're not talking about the electrical easement. You're talking about the right-of-way easement. The one between the sidewalk.
The sidewalk and the street.
Okay.
That's what I was trying to clarify first, Sarah. So
okay. Sorry, I don't know.
I did look at the property. I have it pulled up on Google Maps. It does appear, though, that there are several trees planted in the electrical line easement towards the houses behind George. Is that accurate? Some smaller trees under the power line.
I'm sorry, which direction? Sorry, which direction?
Well, it would be towards the back, I guess. So let me think about that. Probably it would be south.
Be south, okay. Yes, I mean, there are trees that are near the power line, yes.
But none of them that are 30 to 50 feet, it appears to me. Is that accurate?
I don't think so.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, most of the easement, if you scroll down on Google Maps, is completely clear. Like if you follow it south.
Mm-hmm. But it clearly, if you look at, there's definitely trees in the easement.
There's a small vegetation, it looks like to me, but.
I agree. That's what I was asking is there are some, but I would say 20 foot, maybe 10 to 20 foot trees, looks like.
And this is anecdotal. I don't know this for a fact. That was just what a neighbor told me, was that there were some trees that were under the power line in this plot. But either the city or the power company, I'm not sure who, took those trees down, presumably because they didn't want to, all the maintenance and trimming required.
No, that would make sense.
Well, they probably have an absolute right to do that under their easement.
Yeah.
I don't have any further questions. I have some discussion, but no further questions for the applicant.
Anyone else have any questions for the applicant?
You're saying, because it's been a couple days since I drove by, and where's the medium tree again? It was west of the driveway, wasn't it?
Yes, it's west of the driveway and west of the underground drain.
So would that need to be removed in order to space out the new medium tree and large tree? Because that seems like an exercise in madness.
It's a required street tree.
Okay.
So the street tree is not considered with the front yard.
Medium
trees.
and large. Okay.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, I think my landscaper had concerns with a medium and a large tree in that space with that tree in the easement.
If nobody else has questions, I have a question for Zach and Claudia. I don't want to interrupt anybody if nobody else has questions. So,
Go ahead.
are you guys under your special conditions? You said that the criteria is not met because although there's an electrical easement, the staff determined there's room to locate. Are you aware of any other times that a variance was granted based on utility easement through a property, especially specifically for the planting of trees?
We actually did have that discussion, Zach and I, and in my tenure here, and since this code was adopted in '07, we've never had a variance for that tree planting requirement.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anyone else have any questions for the applicant? Jason? No?
All right. If there aren't any more questions for the applicant, do stand by, Mr. Whalen, because we may stir some questions with our discussion. But we'll open this board meeting for discussion amongst the board members. And go ahead, Mr.
Yeah,
Nye.
so Marty, what I would say is I'm looking at obviously the two criteria of the non-use variance. I think is a given. The city's even acknowledged that those two are met. The issue that I'm running into, and I think I have a way around this in my head at least, is the special condition. If in the 13 years this existed, we've never granted one before. There's easements running through property everywhere. This is not unique to their home. What I would say though is, and I don't think that I have an issue saying, is because of the easement and likely the requirement that they can't plant trees under it, that I would at least find that I think it'd be appropriate to apply the 59.9 standard of at least a medium and a small tree or smaller trees to this property. I mean, I think that that's at least reasonable to find a variance for that purpose. I think that's the least restrictive means in my mind. I don't think having no trees I can find, because then think of the number of properties that have easements. We would just have this repeatedly happening. But I certainly think that the request, because the easement they can't control, does give them a special condition, at least to that regard.
Yeah, and we certainly have argued this all different kinds of ways as we have been reviewing this application. In the end, we erred on the side of our landscape staff that felt as though there was room for it. And that's where our recommendation is really grounded in, I guess.
Understand.
And I would like to just observe that I don't believe the way the drainage pipes have been placed is a cause to penalize the applicant as an issue that they have caused, because honestly, they are parallel and running nearly adjacent to the driveway. So they have really confined the interference of that space with what they have installed, which they must have. They have to have surface water drainage. It has to discharge to the street or to and in this case, because they back up to cells, they don't have a discharge point in the back, but they have to either go out to the curb discharge, or they would have to go back to a drainage point in the back if there was one. And in this case, they have really confined themselves in their impacts on the property by choosing to elbow it over to along the driveway, which of course they would have to have as well, a driveway. So I
agree with you. I don't know how. I was thinking, I think that's a really good point, because even if I understand the applicant and the builder were not aware, I don't know how the builder wasn't aware of this requirement if they built in Dublin. But I don't know if, I'm trying to think of it from the builder's perspective, where would they have put the drainage even if they knew that? I mean, I would say that's what I don't like about the special condition requirement, Marty. I think you're right on. I mean, even if they knew that, I don't know how they could have done a better job of placing the drainage, right? I mean, that's a good point.
That would be my opinion. So if anyone has a differing opinion, but I think they have minimized the impact to the lot planting area by choosing to run the drainage as they have.
Right.
I
I agree.
also live in a mature neighborhood with mature trees, and we have had a lot of issues with the older trees backing up and interfering with drainage. So
Yeah, I've had that too. My old house.
Jason, what do you think?
I think it's fairly straightforward. The applicant's already given us the green light that he'll put in maybe a medium or a small. I think the application needs to change to that effect. I agree with you with respect to the electrical piece. I think it falls under that 59.9 into that category. I saw it. I think it's untenable to put a large tree in that front yard.
So is the applicant, just to confirm, would you be willing to put 2 small trees or a small and a medium? What did your landscaper say, just to clarify?
My landscaper suggested 2 small trees.
2 small trees in the front.
Yes.
That would all be west of the driveway, in between
I
that
believe
west
so.
drain, because that seems like that would be the only place you could do it and avoid that.
Unless he felt very comfortable that we could plant it on the east side of the driveway under the power line. But I have not had a detailed discussion with him on that.
Yeah.
It sounded like he said you could put a small one kind of right beside the driveway and then a medium one over into the larger space. Does that sound right?
I think we could get a medium one in on the east portion of the yard.
You mean the west?
Sorry, the west, yes.
Opposite of the easement, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, opposite
Yes.
of the easement,
Okay.
yes.
Yes, okay.
I would prefer, though, 2 smalls versus putting a medium. That's up to you guys.
Because of the drain issue?
Yes.
Well, and he has the medium one on
By
the street easement.
Street tree.
So
Yep.
there's already, shade and considerations for growth of a new medium tree there when you have that.
Right, when you already have that shaded. Right.
Yeah, I would be in favor of 2 small trees. I think that would be doable, and I think it would comply with what the city's asking.
I agree.
Well, I think
Me
we're gonna
too.
have to grant the variance, but we can have the variance motion be granted in such a way to impose upon him a condition of planting 2 small trees.
Yeah. So can we approve a conditional variance? Is that
Yeah.
appropriate then?
That's how I think we do it, is we approve the variance with conditions, and the conditions are that that the applicant will plant 2 small trees in the area, not in the easement area of the electrical easement, but in the area to the west of the driveway, because the driveway runs right up to the easement of the electrical easement, pretty much.
Yeah, I think what our advice would be in this instance would be to have that condition to have the applicant plant 2 small trees and then work with staff to locate them appropriately, as we have now sort of this conversation transcribed, and we'll have transcribed it, and then we can work with our landscape folks to field locate those.
And your landscape folks, they would pull the easement and see if he even has rights in the easement to put trees, if you're gonna make them do that.
No,
We
he's
would
not
not
gonna
make them
put
do
it
that.
in the electrical easement. We're
I was gonna
talking
say.
about
No, just
Just
on the west side.
Yeah.
on the west
Okay.
side.
So
But
our
also-
conditional easement can say, or our conditional variance can say the west side,
It
rather
can say
than
the west
some
side,
broad,
yes.
that, okay.
Yeah, because Sarah, what I was thinking is our conditional approval of the variance would say to plant 2 small trees not to be located in the power line easement. And it gives them then as much freedom with his landscaper to plant on his property. If they found some reason to plant on the other side or found something else they wanted to do, it would give them as much freedom as they could while still complying with us and then not interfering with the power line easement. That was what my intention would be.
What is the
Yeah,
applicant? I just
I'm
wanted
of
to,
the feeling that really the property owner and his landscaper should have some final say on where these 2 small trees will be located relative to the other plantings that either exist, such as the medium tree in the easement, and the plantings that have already been put in for the house.
So you would not, do you agree with Joe, or are you thinking of wording it a different way?
Well, I think I agree with Joe, but I'm not necessarily saying that the city should be able to come out and say, here, you have to put it right here in front of this front door or this window or wherever on that area. I just think we should give him the requirement to put, the condition would be to plant 2 small trees in the non-easement area on the west side of the property.
I think that makes sense.
I think the city still needs to have a say. The city landscaper can work with the applicant's landscaper.
Well, I think,
I don't
Mr.
wanna-
Whalen, do you have a problem with if we grant this variance the way we're discussing with having Mr. Buck work with the city?
I have no problem with that.
Okay.
Perfect.
Well, then I'm happy to make the motion if we're at that point.
I think we're at that point.
Okay.
Just
I
a
move-
reminder,
Go ahead.
since I've asked Zach to put the criteria back up on the screen, since we had come to a different conclusion, we want to make sure that when you are voting that you're citing the criteria.
I believe that
I mean-
they had met the special, well, a couple of things. There was no action on the part of the applicant to cause that easement to be there. That easement pre-exists his ownership of that land, and that easement is significant, the east side easement, the electrical easement. So that, I believe the applicant has not, or has met that criteria, because it wasn't, their construction of the house would not have ever allowed anyone to build either the house or large trees or trees that interfered with the easement. So I believe that they've satisfied that criteria. And I do believe that as a result of that easement, special conditions exist. And another special condition that exists is the fact that there's a tree lawn, call it tree lawn or city tree or city easement between the sidewalk and the street that has a medium-sized, what has been described here as a medium-sized tree in it already. So
Yeah, I agree. So let me take a shot at this then. So I move that we grant the variance because the non-use criteria are all 3 met, and the non-use variance analysis, 2 of the 4 required are met, and that the variance be approved with the condition that 2 small trees be planted on the applicant's property outside of the electrical line easement.
Okay, I make a motion. Is that a motion?
Yeah, that's what I moved.
I second.
Just one piece that the applicant and the city work together to locate the trees.
Yeah, I would add that to the end of it. That's fine.
Okay.
Judy, do you need that repeated?
No, I have it.
Okay,
Are you ready for the vote?
yes.
Mr. Deschler,
Yes.
Ms. Cooper,
yes,
Mr. Nye,
Yes.
Ms. Herbert.
Yes.
all right, the variance has been approved, subject to conditions. And we thank you for your presentation, Mr. Whalen, and we thank you, Zach, for your presentation as well, and for the comments and concerns of staff. And I think we have come to a good resolution. So that will conclude the matter of case number, I think it was 20-120. But are there any communications issues that we need to know about, Claudia or Zach?
No, we do not have anything. And again, we're not sure yet what August looks like in terms of having variance applications or appeals or anything like that. So we will keep you posted if we receive anything.
What is the August date of the hearing?
It's pretty late this time around. It's the 27th.
August 27th. Okay, everybody still think that's good for them?
Yep.
Yep.
All right.
And I wanted to share with all of you on a personal note that Zach is getting married on August the 9th, and he'll be out there for a little bit. So
Well, congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good.
I'm sure you
Great.
appreciate Claudia announcing that to all of us.
And to everybody on the
I'm
internet.
not blushing at all. Don't worry.
All over Facebook.
Yay.
All over YouTube or whatever it is. Yeah. All right. I think then we're done for this evening, and I appreciate everybody participating and being patient with me about the swearing in of the witnesses. And I'll say thank you. If there are no further questions or comments, our next meeting is August 27th. If an application is adjourned or is submitted, and this meeting is adjourned.
thank you very much, and
Thank
give me a
you.
minute to stop the streaming.